football leagues, they're on their way, some drafts, and some drafts in the next couple weeks before the season starts September 8th. And here's a few tight ends I would target and try to draft this season. The first guy's Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. So Aaron Rodgers, we thought he was going to hold out. We thought he would get traded possibly. But he's in one more year here with the Packers, at least at 37. And Rodgers, obviously, the MVP caliber season last year. And Robert Tonyan, he was a good part of this team and a good fantasy asset as one of the better pickups at the tight end position last year in fantasy football. 52 catches, 586 yards, and 11 receiving touchdowns. So those are great numbers. Those are big numbers, especially for tight ends. And there were weeks where he didn't do anything, and then there were weeks where he had 20, 25 fantasy points, was Tonyan. So right here, he's a guy going about 7th, 8th round of fantasy drafts, and I think I'm comfortable in him at that position in fantasy drafts. He's got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's obviously proven and put up numbers, and this is what the Packers have been looking for years going through tight ends. Consistent guys who could be red zone targets for Aaron Rodgers, and that's exactly what Robert Tonyan is. And now also they traded for Randall Cobb a few weeks ago. He's back in the mix, so that could open up the middle of the field more for Tonyan. And I just like where Tanyan's going. I like what I saw from him for the most part last season, even throughout some inconsistent weeks that he had. But he's a player going 7th, 8th round, or even later in some drafts, depending what owners need. He's definitely a good guy to target at the tight end position. And I think he's good for another good season where I'm projecting him probably 750 yards and about 7 to 8 touchdowns, which is a pretty good number in my opinion. And right here, he's a guy to target at tight end. The next tight end I would target this season is TJ Hockenson of the Detroit Lions. I know Matthew Stafford, he got traded for Jared Goff and some picks to the Rams in the offseason. But Hockenson last season, he had a monster year, and he was a top 3 tight end in my opinion last season. 67 catches, 723 yards, 6 touchdowns, 101 targets, and a 2-point conversion under his belt. So right here, I know it's a change at quarterback, but throughout his career, Jared Goff, he likes targeting those tight ends, and obviously as his security blanket. So right here, I think Hockenson, he's a good get where they're ranking him 4th or 5th round, the most fantasy drafts I've been seeing him going. And he's an athletic tight end that the Lions obviously put a lot into, taking him as a top 10 pick a few seasons ago in the NFL draft here was TJ Hockenson. And this season, the projections for him, 955 yards and 10 receiving touchdowns. So that's a pretty huge number. That's a big number, no doubt about it. But I think TJ Hockenson could reach it. And Detroit, they're going to be trailing in a lot of games, I imagine, once again this season. They're changing things up over there. The offense, they don't have that many playmakers. They lost Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay in free agency this offseason. So right here, TJ Hockenson, easily, in my opinion, could be the best receiver in terms of yards, obviously, and catches, even at the tight end position throughout this whole Detroit Lion offense. Because right now, they're in a rebuild mode, kind of. Even though they're trying to still win games and compete, Jared Goff, in my opinion, is not a total scrub, and he's capable of getting TJ Hockenson the ball. And I think that's going to be the case this season, where they're force-feeding Hockenson a lot. And obviously, he's a big target as well to hit. So TJ Hockenson, I liked him last season, and I like him once again this year. And to get him in 4th or 5th round, where he definitely can make a difference at the tight end position, I like him this season as a guy to target. The next tight end is Logan Thomas of the Washington football team. So Logan Thomas last season, very impressive after we didn't see much of him throughout the last couple seasons before that. But now he's converted to tight end. Former quarterback in college is Thomas, and he had a big year, 72 catches, 670 yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. And now his quarterback's most likely going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick starting the season. Last season, Washington, they went through a lot of quarterbacks. Dwayne Haskins, Alex Smith, who played pretty well, even though he never was going to be 100% after coming off that devastating leg injury a few seasons ago. But Logan Thomas, he showed he was a good fantasy player, and he was one of the better pickups as well off the waiver wire at the tight end position last season. And this season, he's ranked 7th or 8th round as well, like Robert Tonyan. And I think that's a good get. He's a big target, 6'8", I believe, is Thomas. And he can make plays, and we know Ryan Fitzpatrick's a gunslinger. And this Washington team, they're going to be in a lot of shootouts, in my opinion, in this NFC East. So it's going to give a lot of opportunities here to Thomas. And he's going to make plays. So this season, I think he gets off to another good start this year. Last year, he came on more towards the end, but now he's more comfortable in Ron Rivera's offense here is Logan Thomas. And I think he has another good year. I could see him getting 700-800 yards and possibly hitting that 10-touchdown mark here is Logan Thomas. He's got the skills, he's got the height, he's got the size, and he's definitely just going to improve. Only last season was really the first year he played full-time at tight end. So right here, Logan Thomas, I think he could be a game-changing tight end for fantasy teams and a guy to definitely target on draft day. The next tight end is Rob Gronkowski of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Gronk, he got off to a super slow start after taking a season off in the NFL before he returned last year with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then as the season went on, Gronk, he got his conditioning up, he got his route running going, and that whole Tampa team as a whole, it just took them a while to get acclimated to each other. A lot of moving parts, but this season they're primed and ready once again to win a championship. And Rob Gronkowski last season, he had a pretty good year considering the way he started. 45 catches, 623 receiving yards, 7 receiving touchdowns. And this season they're projecting 520 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. And right now, Rob Gronkowski, he's going anywhere from 10th to the 12th round in fantasy drafts. And I think that's a huge steal, in my opinion, with a guy with his ability, his playmaking ability as well, and just the rapport him and Tom Brady have had throughout their careers, playing with each other about 10 seasons now on and off. So Rob Gronkowski, another season now that he's back, and I think he's going to get off to the roaring start. Like I mentioned, it took him a few weeks to get going, but now with him healthy and ready to go the whole year, I think he could put up numbers. Obviously, he's not going to be a top 5 tight end most likely in fantasy, but I could see him in the top 8 to top 10 range, and where he's going in drafts, like I mentioned, 10th to 12th round, it definitely could be a steal this season in fantasy football. On the 5th and final tight end I would look to target and draft this season is Darren Waller of the Las Vegas Raiders. So Waller, probably the second best tight end in fantasy football this season, and he's going anywhere from the 2nd to 3rd round right now most drafts. And I know it's hard to get a tight end at that position, but this guy definitely makes a difference, other than besides Travis Kelce, who is the best tight end in football and fantasy football. But Darren Waller, he was putting up number 1 wide receiver numbers last year, and he's still going to be the prime target at Derek Carr, Las Vegas Raider, and John Gruden offense. Last season, 107 catches, 196 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns on 146 targets. And this season, Waller, they're projecting him 1,180 yards and 10 touchdowns, and those are numbers he obviously could achieve. This guy's a matchup nightmare for linebackers and safeties, whoever's going to cover him. And I think, once again, he's going to be the vocal point of this Raider offense. And once again, I think he's going to put up big numbers like they're projecting. And if you could get him 2nd, 3rd round, I know it's a little risky to get a tight end that early in the draft, but this guy's definitely worth it. And him and Kelce are in another tier compared to the other tight ends this season. So that's a few tight ends I would look to target and draft this season heading into fantasy football. So that's a few tight ends I would look to target and draft in the upcoming weeks in fantasy football drafts.